Congratulations, true crime addicts. We've survived another week. It is Friday, April 25th, 2025. This week, the Karen Read trial still makes people angry. A man who claimed to cure HIV has been convicted of a murder for hire plot. And Lori Daybell is still crazy. All this and more, stay tuned.
Yes, super excited. We are all pumped to have James Renner.
James Renner
Suspects that James Renner has zeroed in on.
James Renner once again drops a bombshell.
Investigative journalist, reporter James Renner, who's been on the podcast, longtime friend of mine.
And welcome back to True Crime This Week with me, your host, James Renner. Hey, thanks for coming back as always. True Crime This Week brings you the true crime stories you might have missed in the last week and, distills them down into juicy little nuggets that you can eat at your leisure, whenever you go to work. Hopefully you're listening to this on Friday mornings when it comes out, but, dealer's choice there, whatever floats your boat. Hey, some housekeeping here. I am going to attend CrimeCon UK, which is in London, the first weekend of June. If you're a friend from across the pond and you're thinking about going to CrimeCon, now's the time to get your tickets. Tickets are selling out fast. Use my code. I have a special code. They gave me a special code. Renner10. RENNER 10. That'll get you 10% off your tickets. And then come and say hi. We'll hang out. We'll take a trolley. I don't think they have trolleys. They have the double-decker buses. But it's right by Whitechapel where Jack the Ripper was doing this thing. So we could walk around and check that out. So anyways, hope to see you at CrimeCon UK. As always, I want to thank my buddy Walter for manning the camera. Walter's just back from his interview at 60 Minutes. Apparently they're hiring a new producer over there. Good luck with that, Walter. Let's get to the top stories. That's why you're here. All right, let's just jump right into it. No doubt about it, the top story in True Crime this week was Karen Read again. Season 2 of the Karen Read case premiered this week inside the Norfolk Superior Court in Dedham, Massachusetts, and the writers have already jumped the shark. Karen Read stands accused of second-degree murder, manslaughter, and leaving the scene of an injury or accident, all charges related to the 2022 death of her former boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. The prosecution contends that Karen was mad at John and intentionally backed her SUV into him, knocking him to the ground and leaving him to die in the cold. Meanwhile, the defense believes O'Keefe was actually assaulted inside the home of another police officer named Brian Albert, who owned the property where O'Keefe's body was found the next day, and fellow police officers helped build a case against Karen to protect their own. And even though the jury at the first trial voted to acquit Karen of two of the more serious charges, Judge Beverly Cannoni, or should I say Judge Baloney, ruled that she could be retried on every charge. That seems a little BS to me, right? The case has divided the online true crime community into two warring factions. Just jump on Twitter and type in Karen Read and sit back and watch the mayhem. The more conservative group of true crime people are shouting that she's guilty as sin, where the more liberal armchair detectives see reasonable doubt. Honestly, both sides have become pretty obnoxious, and I've tried to keep away from that for the most part. Anyway, the second trial began this week with opening statements, and more shots were fired than when a black man runs from the Boston PD. Defense attorney Alan Jackson didn't waste any time condemning lead detective Michael Proctor, according to Vanity Fair. He explained how Proctor was fired for his biased actions against Read in this very case, saying to the jury, quote, "Do you have any idea how hard it is for a state trooper to be fired? Well, the evidence is going to show that Michael Proctor earned it," end quote. He's right, by the way. If you recall, Proctor didn't bother doing any real investigation of the Alberts, since Brian Albert was a fellow man in blue. Or, as Proctor put it in text messages, Albert wouldn't catch any shit because he's a Boston cop too. The new lead prosecutor is a guy named Hank Brennan, who defended mobster Whitey Bulger and will earn $225,000 for his work on this case. I guess that's whether she's guilty or not. In his opening, he called out Reed, stating, quote, "She put the Lexus in reverse, put her foot on the gas pedal, and began to press. Not 25%, not 50%, up to 75% force. She clipped John O'Keefe. He fell backwards, hit his head, and broke his skull," end quote. But Jackson and his team of defense attorneys are prepared for this. They intend to call forensic pathologist Elizabeth LaPosada to the stand, who will testify that O'Keefe's injuries could not have come from a car collision or hypothermia, and that he was injured someplace warmer and then moved. Jackson also talked about how Brian Albert got rid of his phone after the incident. He also got rid of his dog and moved out of his house. The first witness called to the stand this week was firefighter Timothy Nuttall, who wrote in his report that he overheard Reed say, "I hit him." In the first trial, he testified that she said it twice. Now he claims she said it 3 times. On cross-examination, Jackson got Nuttall to admit that he'd been coached by the prosecutor the night before his testimony. We're off to a good start here. The defense also destroyed the testimony of witness Jennifer McCabe, who told the grand jury that indicted Reed that she'd heard Reed ask another woman to search how long it took for somebody to die in the cold. But on the stand this week, she admitted she lied to the grand jury and never actually heard Reed say such a thing. We also heard emotional testimony from John O'Keefe's mother, who talked about how Reed asked her if John was really dead at the hospital, and then later came to her house and collected some things from John's bedroom. A suggestive statement the prosecutor made the most of. Today, the jury will be taken on a road trip to view the scene of the crime. Expect more twists and turns as the trial continues next week. 26 people were killed in a mass shooting in Kashmir on Tuesday, according to NPR. This doesn't happen that often outside the United States. When it does, it's kind of a big deal. This happened in the town of Pahalgam, which is high up in the Himalayan mountains and is a popular tourist destination for India's citizens and Hindu pilgrims. They call this area a mini Switzerland for its views of pine forests and alpine meadows. The terrorists were able to escape after the attack, and so far nobody has claimed responsibility, though it's likely linked to the history of the region itself. Kashmir is under India's control, but Pakistan believes it to be their territory. They've been fighting with each other over this since about 1947. Rebels have sometimes committed acts of terror in an effort to subvert India's authority there. The event coincided with Vice President J.D. Vance's visit to India. Poor guy. This guy's had a really bad week. And at this point, his entire trip seems a little cursed, as the Pope died on Monday shortly after meeting with Vance. Maybe it's time for him to come home. A man who claimed to have cured HIV has been convicted of a 2018 homicide this week. Here's the story. 42-year-old Serhat Gumrukcu was a biomedical researcher who was experimenting with the use of cell therapy in treating HIV and AIDS. His method took T cells from healthy donors and implanted them into HIV patients. At one time, he was respected in his field, and his work caught the attention of a man named Gregory Davis, who became Serhat's business partner in a multi-million-dollar biotech firm. But soon, Davis began to question Serhat's honesty. It seems Serhat was involved in some shady money-making deals on the side, and there was some kind of failed oil deal that Davis discovered that, if exposed, would have gotten Serhat charged with fraud. When Davis threatened legal action, Serhat decided Davis had to go. So he hired a hitman named Jerry Banks, who went to Davis's home in Vermont in 2018 and posed as a deputy U.S. Marshal. He then kidnapped Davis, and Davis's body was found on a snowbank near his house the next day. Davis, left behind 6 children. The detectives who investigated Davis's murder quickly uncovered emails between Serhat and Davis that showed how angry they had become with each other. They decided to take a look at Serhat's bank records, and from there, they followed the money that led to this hired hitman. That hitman, Jerry Banks, decided to cooperate with authorities in an attempt to get a lighter sentence for himself, according to Vermont Business. According to testimony from the trial, after kidnapping Davis, Banks drove him to a pull-off area and took Davis out of the back seat under the guise of adjusting his handcuffs. But once he was outside, Banks shot him 14 times with a .22 caliber pistol that had been modified with a silencer. Then he dumped his body in the snow. Serhat was found guilty of 3 counts of murder for hire and wire fraud. He faces a possible mandatory sentence of life in prison now. Call me crazy, but I'm beginning to think Serhat didn't really cure HIV either. Those are the top stories. I will be right back after these messages with an update in the Lori Daybell case, a solved cold case out of South Carolina, some weird news, lots more to come. I'll be back in 2 and 2.
Please hang up and try again.
And we're back with True Crime This Week, brought to you by Cheetos Lip Balm. Get cheesy with your lips. Lori Daybell, who lost her freedom and apparently her eyebrows after being convicted of murdering her children in a bizarre doomsday plot, was found guilty this week of conspiring with her brother to kill her 4th husband, Charles Vallow, according to ABC News. Daybell represented herself at trial, like perfectly sane people do all the time. She claimed her brother Alex Cox only killed Charles in self-defense, but prosecutors said Charles was killed so that Daybell could collect on the $1 million life insurance policy he had, and so she could be with her fellow doomsday prepper Chad Daybell, whom she married 4 months after Charles's murder. Daybell believed that Charles was possessed by an evil spirit of unspeakable power named Ned. The eternal evil demon was named Ned. Since she is serving life in prison for killing her kids, this ruling won't affect her much unless she too is immortal. She'll go on trial again soon after being charged with having her brother try to kill her niece's ex-husband as well. So anyways, this is apparently the week of hitman stories. According to the New York Post, the hitman who killed fashion icon Maurizio Gucci shot his own 37-year-old son in the face before shooting himself on Tuesday. 63-year-old Benedetto Carallo had his family over to his home in Pisa, Italy, for Easter when the attack occurred. Carallo was convicted of killing Gucci in 1995 on orders from Gucci's ex-wife. He was released, though, after serving just 18 years. Anyway, at Easter, an argument ensued, and Carallo pulled a gun and shot his son in the face. He then turned the gun on himself in a suicide attempt. Somehow, both of them survived. His son also sounds kind of like a badass because after he was shot in the face, he drove himself to a bar before he was rushed to a hospital. Carallo remains in serious condition at this time. I don't know. What could you possibly be fighting about at Easter that would lead to attempted murder? I'm assuming somebody ran out of deviled eggs. 23-year-old Tyler Wilkins has confessed to the unsolved murder of Jordan Nebling of South Carolina, according to USA Today. Nebling was reported missing in October 2020. At the time, she was in a relationship with Wilkins, but her body was never found, and there was not enough evidence to charge Wilkins with the crime. However, after Nebling disappeared, Wilkins started seeing a 22-year-old woman named Clarissa Winchester, who became pregnant with his child. But then, last September, Clarissa disappeared too. When police went to Wilkins' house, they discovered Clarissa's body in his bedroom. The baby had also died. Wilkins was convicted of her murder and sent to prison to serve a 45-year sentence. But at prison one day, he confessed to Nebling's murder as well, saying he stabbed her to death. Prison authorities then contacted detectives investigating the case. He has not yet been charged, but police consider the case closed and hope one day he reveals where her body can be found. Strange story out of California this week. On Tuesday, 74-year-old Orange County Superior Court Judge Jeffrey Ferguson was found guilty of murdering his wife during an argument while watching Breaking Bad on TV, according to the Associated Press. Prosecutors said that on August 3, 2023, Ferguson and his wife Cheryl went to dinner at a Mexican restaurant and got into an argument over finances. At the dinner, Ferguson was seen making a gun-like hand gesture at his wife. When they got home, they turned on the TV. They were watching Breaking Bad when Cheryl told her husband to point a real gun at her if he meant business, to which Ferguson then pulled a gun from his ankle holster and shot her dead. At trial, Ferguson said he only intended to set the gun down and it went off by accident. But prosecutors showed texts to the jury, which Ferguson had sent to his bailiff, which read, quote, "I just lost it. I shot my wife. I won't be in tomorrow," end quote. He also confessed to police that he'd killed his wife. And when police searched his house, they found 47 weapons and 26,000 rounds of ammunition. Whenever I hear of someone with that many guns, I tend to think that they really are just looking for an excuse to use them. He faces a maximum prison term of 40 years to life at his sentencing in June. Let's jump over to weird news, shall we? Last Saturday, deputies in Highland County, Florida, responded to a call about a man stealing liquor from the Spring Lake Market. 39-year-old Richard Smith allegedly walked out of the store with a can of Kettle One vodka spritz without paying, and then started to drive around the store in his car. When police arrived, Smith offered the vodka spritz to the officers, saying, "I was just going to give you a drink, that's it," and then continued driving. He then tried to ram 2 patrol cars, and the chase ended after his tires were destroyed by spike strips. Unfazed, Smith lit a cigarette and got out of his car as if nothing had happened, telling the police, quote, "You guys had fun though, right?" end quote. They replied by promptly tasing him. Here's one officer told the New York Post, "We don't know if he was expecting us to just say cheers and let him go or what." Look, I know what he did was wrong and also dangerous, but I kind of want to party with Richard Smith. Sounds like a fun time. Over to pop culture. This week, Netflix released a trailer for the new true crime documentary, A Deadly American Marriage, which premieres May 6th on the streamer. Now, I was unaware of the story behind this documentary, and it's very interesting. It's about the 2015 murder of Jason Corbett, an Irish widower with 2 young children who married his au pair, Molly Martins, and moved to North Carolina. Then one night, Corbett was beaten to death by Molly and her father. Nobody disputes that fact. But they claim they killed him in self-defense after he started choking Molly. The kids, however, who are now grown up, seem to suggest differently. I'm going to watch that one. It sounds a little rough, but I'm going to watch it. I'm interested. The true crime book of the week this week is an interesting one. There's this new book out just this week. It's about my favorite crime story of all time, The Strange Life and Suicide of Joseph Newton Chandler. It's part of the 50 States of Crime book series, and the title is The Cleveland John Doe Case. It was written by an excellent journalist and personal friend of mine, Tybalt Race. Here's the write-up. In July 2002, the Eastlake Police discovered a decomposed body in a modest studio apartment in Cleveland, Ohio. It appeared to be a suicide by firearm. The man was Joseph Newton Chandler III, a retiree whom neighbors and former colleagues described as quiet, secretive, and strange. But as the investigation progressed, less and less about Joseph's life and identity made sense. In 2018, thanks to scientific advances in DNA, the man's true identity was finally discovered. His name, Robert Ivan Nichols. A veteran with a wife and 3 sons, Nichols eventually left his family, telling his wife, quote, "One day you will know why," end quote. A few years later, in 1965, his family reported him missing. By 1978, he had stolen the identity of Joseph Newton Chandler III, who'd been killed in a car accident at 8 years old. But who was this man, and why did he change his name? What secret was he trying to hide? Tybalt examines the case, exploring the many theories that have emerged, from the craziest to the most credible. Among those theories is a possible connection to the Zodiac Killer, whose murders date back to 1968 and 1969 in California, when Nichols was there. I love everything about this case. It's super interesting. It was actually the seed of the idea that became my novel, The Man from Primrose Lane. And it's weirder and weirder the deeper you go into it. I personally think that Robert Ivan Nichols is a good suspect for Zodiac. But the theories range all over the place. Some people think he's Jim Morrison, which is ridiculous. But anyways, check it out. This is the Joseph Newton Chandler, the Cleveland John Doe case. And that's the show for this week. That was a good one, wasn't it? I felt good about that one. Spring is here in Ohio. Go out, celebrate. I'm going to be working on the lawn. And I'll catch you next Friday morning. Same bat station, same bat time. And in the meantime, in the words of the incomparable Murray Saul, the godfather of Cleveland radio, we gotta get down, damn it. True Crime This Week is a Fearful Symmetry production. Photo and artwork are licensed through Shutterstock. If you like the cut of my jib, I have another podcast you might enjoy called The Philosophy of Crime, in which I attempt to solve the big questions behind our true crime obsession by looking to philosophy for answers. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Sit, Brownie, sit. Good dog.